Recently, the NBA season concluded with the Oklahoma Thunder winning the NBA championship, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to focus on something else relevant to the NBA, and it's this conversation going around about Memphis being too dangerous for NBA players. A number of former NBA players talked about it, including Richard Jefferson and Danny Green. Stephen A. Smith spoke on it as well. The Gilbert Arenas show panel talked about it as well. And we all know why Memphis is ghetto and dangerous. It's not because of the racist white supremacists as the NBA would love to promote with their whole, BLM agenda that they were pushing, especially during the bubble. It's because of Negroes. That's why Memphis is too dangerous for NBA players. And the fact is, they encourage that. So I feel no sympathy for the NBA players. My sympathy goes out to, people like the billionaire heiress that was kidnapped, raped, and killed back in 2022. A kindergarten teacher, if you haven't heard that story, she was a 34-year-old kindergarten teacher, mother of two, and while she was jogging, she was raped and killed. Just to give you a hint of how dangerous it is not even safe for billionaire heiress. She's the granddaughter of someone called Joseph Orgill III. And yes, it was a Negro that did it, by the way. But, more than likely, her family are probably a bunch of libtards too. But yeah, and there were other people trying to defend, obviously saying that, well, other cities are dangerous as well. But again, why are those cities dangerous? The primary problem, the primary issue is always Negro crime. That's just the reality of it. But you can guarantee a league like the NBA and the media that revolves around it will never address that fact. In fact, Memphis Grizzlies, one of their star players, if not their star player, is a wannabe thug in Ja Morant. And you remember how, he was getting involved in gangster-like activity, portraying a thug. And that's their star player that they heavily promote. And when a thug rapper gets murdered in Memphis, they elevate him like he was some sort of hero, icon, positive example for Memphis. Political officials who are usually Negro, lauding this guy, that being Young Dolph. So what do you expect when you elevate as heroes thug rappers and wannabe thug NBA players, and you have a tradition of being a libtard state that wants to ignore the main issue, which is Negro crime? Of course, it's going to be not just unsafe for a bunch of entitled, bratty as NBA players, but it's going to be unsafe for people in general that live there or live near there. Because again, anytime you hear players getting caught up in some sort of criminal situations or being victims of crime, including like NFL players, the one that played for the Washington Redskins that was killed in his home, is usually involving a not white supremacist. It's more black on black crime. But the fact is, none of these people talking about this situation currently is going to address it. And like I said, if anybody deserves to be victims of the dangers of Memphis, it is these NBA players. Because they like to promote this gangster thug persona, especially post Allen Iverson. And that entire league like to blame issues that aren't issues in society, like racism against Negroes. No, it's Negro crime. That is the number one issue in this country. Even more than the illegal situation or worrying about any potential wars overseas. The day-to-day, in your face, that we're always dealing with is the Negro crime. And if you're a so-called black person that seeks to deflect from that, like it's something else, then you're a part of the problem. I mean, you're literally aiding and abetting people that are more than likely to be responsible for hurting you. Because still, despite the error situation that I highlighted, most victims of black crime are so-called black people. You know, and again, it's not just the crime, it's the nuisance, insufferable behavior. Because there's a lot of ways people can behave that aren't illegal, but they're still disturbing. You know, they still create a tense environment, to say the least. You know, that ghetto hood acting behavior. You know. But anyway, they're not going to address the real issue, just like liberals in general. You know, liberals in general never address the issues, and thus the issues continue. Which is why it's incumbent on people who aren't liberals or who claim not to be liberals to actually force the solution. Because debating with people or debating with liberals and using truth, proof, and evidence to highlight the issues, to try to get them to come to their senses, to want to do something about it, is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. You can't reason with people who are obliviously suicidal. Because that's what this is when you're not addressing the real crime problem in society. It's a suicidal behavior that goes unrecognized because liberals are just spiritually low IQ, to say the least.